In one of his final interviews in October 1980, John Lennon was asked whether Paul McCartney's work with Wings had ever caught him off guard creatively. Lennon answered with calm certainty, nothing Paul did surprised him. After all, he'd known him since they were teenagers, and understanding someone that deeply left little room for surprise. And indeed, their connection was more than just a musical partnership, it was fraternal. Even 10 years after the Beatles disbanded, the emotional thread that bound Lennon and McCartney hadn't unraveled. Despite their differences, the two shared a relationship grounded in admiration and mutual respect. Biographers often paint their bond as relatively straightforward. While their personalities diverged, Paul being more diplomatic, John more rebellious, their upbringings mirrored each other. Both were raised in working-class Liverpool during the post-war years, at a time when American rock and roll was crashing onto British shores. They were drawn to it with the same magnetic pull, catching the wave together. They shared an uncanny, wordless communication. A look, a subtle grin, a lifted eyebrow, or a silly face was often all it took for them to know exactly what the other was thinking. Though they were different in character, their differences were complementary. Musically, their voices melted into one another, creating a blend that became a Beatles trademark. Unlike many other bands that revolved around a single star, the Beatles truly operated as a unit, an ensemble without a fixed frontman. Mick Jagger once famously likened them to a four-headed monster, and within that beast, John and Paul were the central brains. George Harrison once remarked in the Beatles anthology that John and Paul carried a certain unspoken dominance, as if they were the core duo, and he and Ringo were orbiting around them. It was never openly expressed, but it was understood. As songwriting collaborators, Lennon and McCartney thrived on a spirited, almost brotherly rivalry. It wasn't about outshining the other, it was about inspiring one another to raise the bar creatively, song after song. That creative spark had been alive since the very beginning, when John invited Paul to join his teenage skiffle group, the Quarrymen, in 1957. Their partnership evolved and matured, reaching its zenith during the Beatles' most innovative period, the early studio years following their retirement from touring, particularly between Revolver and Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Amid this creative golden age, someone new entered John's orbit, Yoko Ono. A conceptual artist from Tokyo, Yoko was known within London's experimental art scene, but remained obscure to the broader public. At that time, John was still married to Cynthia, whom he had met during their art college days in Liverpool. Yoko was also married and had a child of her own. But when she and John crossed paths at the Indica Gallery in London in November 1966, there was an immediate and intense connection, something ineffable, almost mystical. They both felt it. Though nothing physical happened right away, their bond grew stronger, eventually culminating in a full-blown love affair about a year and a half later. Sadly, it came to light in a painful way when Cynthia unexpectedly came home early from a trip and discovered them together. With Yoko now at the center of John's life, they quickly became inseparable. Like any couple in the honeymoon phase, they were constantly together. But their closeness challenged a long-standing, unwritten Beatles rule: no significant others in the recording studio. Yoko began accompanying John to every session at Abbey Road. Ringo, often seen as the most easygoing member and the last to join the band, didn't seem to mind. But for Paul and George, her presence changed the atmosphere. The studio, once a private creative sanctuary, suddenly felt different, more tense, more complicated. Paul later acknowledged that he struggled with Yoko being there all the time. Part of him felt like he was losing the person he had once shared an intense creative rhythm with. At the same time, he was reluctant to confront the issue out of fear of upsetting John or creating even more friction. He didn't know how to address the situation without causing a rift.